Hello friends, welcome to Kumar IS. So we were studying the political science series and we completed till Gramsci and we started Hannah Arendt, and in Hannah Arendt we studied her theory of action and the basic conceptual framework around which Hannah Arendt builds her theory, and the times of Hannah Arendt, and the basic flow in which she gives her political philosophy. She is quite phenomenal and original in her thinking, and her views are quite different. We discussed how. So if you have not watched the previous videos, please do watch them. Otherwise, you won't be able to grasp this video. So now we'll study the remaining portion of Hannah Arendt. So without much delay, आज की कथा को start करते हैं. So we are going to study Hannah Arendt's concept of power or politics. Look, power means generally we have a conception of brute force. If somebody says that I have power, पैसा और power चलता है इंडिया में, ठीक है, पैसा and power. So what notion of power we have? We have a different kind of notion about power. But Hannah Arendt always gives new interpretations to the already existing concepts and frameworks. Let us see what she says about power. So, Hannah Arendt, in all her theories, she gives phenomenological experience. What is the phenomenological? So, the phenomenological explanation basically means that a thinker builds his theory or her theory based on the real life experience. Real life experience, or you can say watch and theorize. Okay, so that's what is called phenomenological. When we say Hannah Arendt gives phenomenological explanation, her way of explaining the things are like that. So she says that power is the characteristics of collectivity. Again, she brings the same concept. She says that man, not man lives, and she gives concept of June politikon and political animal. So you just see, she is bringing collectivity in the picture. That means she wants to end isolation. She wants to end isolation. This is the concept of Hannah Arendt. Hannah Arendt just wants to end the isolation. Why? Because in isolation there is no question of political sphere. And political sphere only comes when there is deliberation. And in deliberation, it cannot be alone. Deliberation can never be alone. Deliberation needs people. Deliberation needs civil society. And that's what the Hannah Arendt's main focus is. All her theories revolves around this central concept of collectivity. You can say it collectivity, then you can say it civil society or political sphere, in different ways and means and in different terminologies. She will explain the same thing and she will explain the different concepts keeping this central point. Why? Because she experienced Nazism and fascism. So she concluded that both these are reason of isolation. Due to the isolation of man just focus on his profession and state becomes autocrat. That's why there should be participation in the public sphere, and if you participate in public sphere, that is the real action, and that is the action of June politikon. I hope that you understand this conceptually. If you try to understand things conceptually, then you will be able to grasp things easily, and it will be, political science will become quite easy for you. And otherwise, if you just cram the things, ki bhai Hannah Arendt theories, these points are there, you try to mug up the theories, then thinkers and theories become the most difficult part. You will just, make things hodgepodge and nobody will be able to understand. So in that way, things should be understood quite conceptually. And political science, it is a science. Never forget, science means there must be concepts. Let's move. So, like the scholars which interprets Hannah Arendt, they say that you do not expect any historical historical factor explanation of totalitarianism from Hannah Arendt as we generally expect, and she just gives phenomenological explanation, and because she witnessed the nightmare of the Nazi state. So that's why I already explained you what is phenomenological. For example, she says that, okay, I just switched here. I just missed some part, so I started from here and I left somewhere in between. I was explaining power and I just switched to some other topic. Sorry for that. I will come to totalitarianism later on. So I will just explaining you the characteristics of collectivity. Power is cannot be exercised in solace. Power is the feature of collectivity. Why? Because she says that power belongs to community, not the individual. And only when the individual acts in concert with others, then only there is question of exercising power. And she says that power is always legitimate. That means she gives positive explanation of power. For Hannah Arendt, power does not mean brute force. No brute force. Power does not mean negative connotation for Hannah Arendt. And let us see how. She says that force belongs to the world of nature and strength is the individual characteristics. Force means the brute force, so that is in state of nature, like animals. Animals practice force, and strength is the individual characteristics, and violence, like she very clearly says that violence is what state exercises. And why she is saying like that? Because she witnessed Nazi state. That's why her views are like that. So for us, we just take that force, strength, violence, all are kind of similar things. But for Hannah Arendt, they are not similar. That's why she's differentiating them very clearly. What is force, what is strength, and what is violence. And power is completely different. Power is the characteristics of collectivity. It belongs to the community, and the power is only when individuals acts in concert. She says power is always legitimate, and authority is directly related to legitimate power. If you are exercising authority, that means you have legitimate power. So only legitimate power can result into authority. And she says that office is not the source of power. Quite profound. Office is not the source. So for example, if you are elected the head of the government and your electorate is completely completely biased in a sense, somehow you just got elected by toppling the existing government, or by ABC, whatever method, you just sit in one throne. Okay, so that is not legitimate. Hannah Arendt says that power is not connected to office, and office is not the source of power. Power is sui generis. Quite important. These are keywords. Actually, I have just mentioned keywords in my notes, so you can remember these keywords quite deeply. Please always remember these keywords. She says that the office is not the source of power. It's not that only when you become some officer, then only you can exercise power. No. She says that power is sui generis and it emerges on its own. She says power cannot be stored. And This is closely linked to the concept of politics, June politikon. I already explained why, no need to explain again. And she gives completely unconventional view of power. This was not the view of power earlier existing, but Hannah Arendt takes it very differently. And in unconventional sense, conventional sense, the concept of power means office, property, everything. But no, she says no, power is not property, power is not office, power is sui generis. It emerges in collectivity, in state of collectivity, as I already explained you. Power emerges out of, on its own. You need not to give power, it cannot be stored. So if it cannot be stored, then it cannot be given also. She says that it cannot be stored. If it cannot be stored, then nobody can give it. If I can store something, then only I can give it away. If I cannot store, there is no question of giving it away. So power cannot be stored at all. Power is not a commodity. Nobody controls a power. Power in her explanation means sui generis, which generates on its own, and that only generates in the state of collectivity, in the civil society or political sphere, whatever you want to call it. And she says that the site of politics is not parliament, because in parliament you can say power is stored. In parliament, the office is the source of power, but she says that's why that site of politics is not parliament but civil society. Here comes the concept of civic republicanism. That's why she says that site of politics and is civil society, and that's why the politics should be participative and deliberative, and there should be participative and deliberative democracy. So this is the concept of power in Hannah Arendt. If you have some doubt, if you cannot understand something, please do ask in the comment box. I will personally answer them. So now let's move to the next work of Hannah Arendt, which little bit I already explained you by mistake. So Hannah Arendt on origin of totalitarianism. So on origin of totalitarianism is the another work of Hannah Arendt, and it is but natural why she kept the name of her work on totalitarianism. It is again the phenomenological explanation of the things, and phenomenology basically means that a scholar builds his or her theory based on the personal experience he or she has witnessed in her life. So the theory on origin of totalitarianism, it is the most controversial theory, and it criticizes Nazism and Stalinism. I hope that it's quite clear why. And it was just ideological project of Cold War. Some scholars say like that also, that just to support the United States and some this theory has been built. So she's being criticized, but anyways, that Margaret Cannon, supposed to be the most authentic interpreter of Hannah Arendt, it is said that please do not expect any historical factors of totalitarianism from Hannah Arendt. Hannah Arendt is quite original in her thinking. So features of totalitarianism, like political scientists explaining constitutional feature and all of totalitarian regime, that's not how Hannah Arendt explains totalitarianism. She gives phenomenological explanation, which I already explained you, because she witnessed the nightmare of Nazi state. So what definition she gives of totalitarianism? She says that totalitarianism is totalitarianism. That's why she is called the unconventional scholar. She says, what is totalitarianism? Totalitarianism is totalitarianism. That's it. That is the definition she is giving. Because she says that you cannot explain totalitarianism in any other ways and means. It is just that thing only. It is so unique that there is no analogy of totalitarianism existing otherwise. So she says that imperialism is nothing but emancipation of bourgeois. It is just a project of bourgeois class, and British, France, and they just went off frustration on the colonies. And she says that Stalin's purges and Hitler's concentration camps, they are not different, they are just equal. So she keep both the things in one category, and she categorically criticizes all the authoritarian regimes. So colonialism also comes into that. Colonialism comes into that, and apart from colonialism, Nazism, fascism, everything comes, and she criticizes it categorically and theoretically. And she says that both purges of Stalin and Hitler's concentration camp, they both determine colossal wickedness that defies common sense. These are keywords you can always remember to mention in the answers. Colossal wickedness that defies common sense. That defies common sense. Colossal wickedness that defines common sense. So these are fancy ways of putting the things. Otherwise you can just say it in another words, but if you quote Hannah Arendt, it gives a different impact to the examiner. And then in the chapter of on totalitarianism book, Ideology and Terror, she says that for earlier regimes, historically, terror was a means to achieve an end. There was some goal, that's why terror was unfolded in the history. But in 20th century totalitarianism, terror became an end in itself. And totalitarian states are based on the ideology of terror. And terror become ideology in itself. Earlier, terror was used to achieve an ideology. Okay, a ruler is believing in an ideology and he creates terror to achieve that ideology. But here that is not the case. She says that for totalitarian states in 20th century, terror was an end in itself. क्यों मार रहे हो? बस मार रहे हैं इसलिए मार रहे हैं, है ना? हाना अरेंट का ये बोलना है कि टोटलिटेरियन स्टेट आर लाइक दैट इन 20th सेंचुरी. उनको पूछे कि लोगों को क्यों मार रहे हो, तो उसका रीजन ये है, पहले के रूलर्स बोल सकते थे कि हम लोगों को इसलिए मार रहे हैं क्योंकि ये हमारे विरोधी हैं, इनको मारेंगे तो हमें ये अचीव होगा. बट फॉर फासिज्म एंड नाजिज्म दिस वाज नॉट द केस. वहां पे कि भाई लोगों को क्यों मार रहे हो, कि लोगों को मारना है इसलिए लोगों को मार रहे हैं, दैट्स इट. व्हाई? बिकॉज हिटलर एंड मुसोलिनी, both of them were already at the helm of the state. They were already at the top of the power. They need not to kill anybody to achieve power. They were already the rulers in a sense. Not only rulers, they were absolute rulers. So they were already absolute rulers. Then still why they need to create terror? That's why she says that it became an ideology in itself. कि भाई लोगों को मारना है इसलिए मार रहे हो, that's it. किस लिए मार रहे हो? मारना है इसलिए मार रहे हैं. That's why she says totalitarianism is totalitarianism. No other explanation or definition can be given for totalitarianism. That's what her argument is. And she says that theater of totalitarianism is the concentration camps, and Nazis, they just wanted entire world to make theater of death. Just that theater of death, that was the goal in itself, no other goal. And the mass murder was to reject the plurality and to make homogenization and reducing individuals to masses. That, it became an end itself. That to reject the plurality and homogenize the masses and reducing individual to masses. And it was systematic murder, and it was justified on scientific theories like survival of the fittest, which Hitler projected, the most prominent or the most suitable race. So she says that it is just justified on scientific theories like this, and both victim and the executors, they were having status of robot. Why? Because victims were just unable to oppose. Why? they were so busy in making their professional gains that they were not, sort of, in Hannah Arendt's view, they were not having, they could not just oppose because they had no political power. They had no political power in a sense. And the killers, or you can say the executors, they are also completely passive in a sense that they acted just like a cog in the machinery, cog in the big machine. So Hannah Arendt says in her another work, Eichmann in Jerusalem, that they were all of the Hitler's officials. They were not hating Jews personally. Everybody was not hating the Jews personally, but they just had a status of robot, and they were acting as per the law of the nature, and no faith in the human will. भाई जो हो रहा है वो हो रहा है, ऐसा ही होगा, हम कुछ नहीं कर सकते. हमें हमारे बॉस ने जो बोला हमें वो करना पड़ेगा. बॉस ने बोला सबको मार दो तो मार दो, दैट्स इट. I mean, that was the concept. That's why she says that it was the state of colossal wickedness that defies common sense. We just can't understand that how the human being can act like that. That's why he says that there was no faith in the human will. There was no resistance at all from any quarter. No resistance at all. The victims, they were victimized without any resistance, and the perpetrators, they were victimizing them without any resistance. That was the state of affairs. And Hannah Arendt says that totalitarianism is remarkable for mass support. It represents extreme selflessness and the devotion of the followers. And it makes the masses superfluous. She says that totalitarian movement is not the movement of classes. It is just the phenomena of masses who share only the experience of being superfluous of the world. That means that there are not different classes which are fighting amongst each other. There is no fight at all. Nothing is existing. Everything becomes homogenized, superfluous. You just can't separate anything from anything. Everything becomes like khichdi, and nothing can be separated in the state of totalitarianism, and it just becomes superfluous. And superfluousness basically in Hannah Arendt's words means selflessness, hopelessness. These are keywords: selfless, hopelessness, state of isolation. And she says that lonely man always deduces one thing from the another and thinks everything to the worst. That's why she says that loneliness is the worst thing, and the man should act in concert. That's why she gives concept of civil society, and she gives concept of political animal and June politikon. Okay, because in loneliness, man just deduces one thing from another and he thinks to the worst, and he becomes passive, and he becomes hopeless, and he becomes selfless completely, and he just gives everything to the leader. And such masses turn to a leader who appears to be a source of security. Basically the source of security is the reason why the masses become superfluous and they just loses the common sense. And that's why that's why these kind of phenomena, Nazism and Stalinism, they are seen. So she just explains the nature of Nazi party or fascist party, that it is just onion-like structure. There are hierarchies of initiations, and there are hierarchies of contempt, and the core leaders of the party, they themselves understand the falsehood. Party is just propagating the false ideology, and the inner elite does not even believe in the official ideology. Party is just propagating for the another groups, and the top leaders, core leaders, they even understand its falsehood because she was existing. So that's why this is phenomenological experience. She was existing there, that's why she was explaining. And so totalitarianism is a movement. There is no end. Terror is end in itself. and it is a pathology. She says that totalitarianism, it's a kind of pathology. There is no end. Terror is an end in itself. And she says that Nazi party just like onion-like structure, selfless devotion of masses, and masses just get sense of exclusive identity and superior race, and then the attractiveness not from the leader's ability to fulfill the promise, rather ability to create fiction. कौन लीडर कितने बड़े सपने दिखा सकता है? That's what that's where the concept of Nazism and fascism comes. The leaders who can sell the dreams, create the fiction, he can become good leader. So that's what Hannah Arendt's views on Nazism and fascism, on totalitarianism, the concept of power, totalitarianism, we all saw in this lecture. So we hope that you are enjoying our lecture. So if you find them useful, please like the videos, subscribe the channel, and spread this like a wildfire, because everybody cannot afford this coaching in big cities or the costly online coachings nowadays. So we hope that these videos will definitely add values to your civil services preparation. And thank you so much for coming to S. Kumar's classroom. In upcoming videos, we'll study the remaining part of Hannah Arendt and the next topic onwards. Thank you so much.